Chapter 2. So do you think it was the same guy? Trish persisted. She watched as Nita sorted an armload of sweaters and wished for the 100th time that she could have found a job in the clothing store like this one. I don't know. It sounds like it could be. Nita shook her head and chuckled. How totally weird. You just never know these days who's going to be behind a newspaper. It's not funny, Nita. He was really creepy. Trish frowned and glanced at her watch. If you're going to eat dinner with me, then come on. I don't have all night. Bethany's watching me like a hawk. Don't you just love this new display I did? Nita steered her towards a counter, beaming proudly. All these old-fashioned paperweights with these wonderful patterns all over them. Don't you think they'll go with these new scarves? Well, Trish said doubtfully, I guess. Well, I mean, they don't match exactly, Nita said, sounding indignant. It's, art. I think it's nice, Trish said quickly. Now can we go eat? We have to get Imogen first, Nita reminded her. If we can tear her away from her stupid bookstore, I think she's the only one in the whole universe who actually eats, sleeps and breathes her work. Imogen likes everything, Trish reminded her, smiling fondly. Imogen and Nita were twins, but none would ever have guessed it. Nita had a tall, willowy dancer's frame and a classical sort of beauty, while Imogen was straight and prim, with mousy brown hair and glasses that looked too big for her face. The three of them had been inseparable since 4th grade, doing everything together, and now as seniors in high school, they were still the very best of friends. While the eatery was located in the centre section of the mall on the main floor, the latest trend, where Nita worked, was on the 2nd level, with Imogen working directly opposite in the bookstore. Now, while Nita finished up with her sweaters, Trish walked to the entrance and waved as Imogen wandered out of the bookstore with her nose in a magazine. Hi, Trish greeted her as they both sat down together on a bench to wait for Nita. Hi yourself. Imogen always reminded Trish of a little wise old owl woman with her round glasses and her equally round stare. There's more to this mall than meets the eye. Trish looked startled. Why do you say that? I have a theory. Imogen began, then looked up as Nita stopped beside them with a groan. You always have a theory about something, and right now I can't take a single one of your theories on an empty stomach. Mexican? Trish suggested. Their favourite fast food was located at the furthest end of the eatery and the farthest away from Bethany's watchful eye. It's the spice of life. Imogen shrugged, falling into step behind them. It's the only spice in your life, Nita threw back. Honestly, Imogen, I'm so glad we're not identical. But you're still not taking me seriously, Trish broke in, referring back to their conversation at the store. That guy, I'm telling you, he was really strange. What guy? Imogen asked. Oh, some weirdo hitting on Trish and her muffins, Nita chuckled. Look, there are lots of crazes in this mall. She waved her hand airily, indicating the crowds around them. They're harmless. I mean, this place is full of people. Nobody's going to try anything weird with all these other people around. That's not necessarily so, Imogen spoke up. Actually, it's the perfect place for someone to try something weird. One could easily get lost in the masses. You go. Nita shoved her good-naturedly. You go get lost in the masses, please. Imogen ignored her. She stared solemnly at Trish, who looked back with a tolerant smile as the girl continued. There's always something going on at the mall, and especially this mall. Okay, Nita sighed. You don't have to go on sounding so mysterious. You've hooked my curiosity. Why especially this mall? Well, surely you can see for yourself this mall is not like other malls, Imogen stated matter-of-factly. Because it's the oldest mall in the whole state? Nita tried to keep a straight face. Because it's the oldest mall to survive extinction and come out of the Dark Ages? It's been renovated at least 15 times over the years, Imogen went on, undaunted. It's been built over time and time again without any real architectural pattern or design. It is a mess, Trish agreed, looking around as they walked. But that's what I like about it. I think that's what everyone likes about this place. It's got a kind of charm that no other mall has. None of the new ones, anyway. A macabre charm, Imogen clarified. I'd be willing to bet there are so many tunnels and hallways and passages built on and added to over the years. There's probably no one still living who knows about all of them. Ooh, Nita shuddered deliciously. I like it. I don't, Trish frowned. And why do you have to bring all that up anyway, Imogen? Because I've been hearing the rumours again, Imogen said stubbornly. What rumours? Trish asked. If you mean about what happened at my store last night, Nita began, but Imogen cut her off. I mean the shoplifting. This time Nita and Trish echoed together. Shoplifting? Imogen nodded. Things are disappearing all over the mall. Nita burst into laughter. Come on, Imogen, things are always being shoplifted around here. You call that news? Tell me something really juicy. But that's not the point, Imogen went on calmly. Okay, Trish conceded. What is the point? The point is that none of the alarm systems are going off. Those dinky little alarm systems aren't worth anything, and you know it, Nita chuckled. I bet we lose hundreds of dollars of stuff every month just in our little place. No, Imogen continued. Even with the new systems, the more sophisticated systems they've tried out in the department stores, they're still not catching these things being stolen. Well, what really makes me mad is that someone out there is ripping off all these wonderful clothes and I have to pay for the ones I want. Nita rolled her eyes. Not just clothing, Imogen informed her. Lots of other things like kitchen equipment, for example. What kind of kitchen equipment? Trish glanced at her. Dishes, gourmet food stuff, even bottles of wine and ice picks. Someone's throwing one hell of a party, Nita chuckled. Wish they'd invite me. Linens, Imogen went on calmly, pillows, blankets, perfumes, even furniture. Furniture? Trish laughed. How can anyone sneak out a piece of furniture? And books, Imogen sounded indignant, from my bookstore. So, Nita sighed, what are you saying? I have a theory. I have hunger pains. Nita threw up her hands. Enough already. Give me some money, Imogen. I left my purse in the store. How convenient. Trish gave Nita a reproachful look as Imogen obligingly dug into her bag and handed her sister some bills. Well, at least she's good for something. Nita grinned shamelessly and led the way to an empty table. While Nita and Imogen went off to get the food, Trish sat and saved their places, letting her eyes wander idly around the busy eatery. There was every kind of meal for sale here, from junk food to health food, from pastry to salad bars to ethnic temptations. And the huge area was always filled with people, always noisy with conversation and laughter and the rattle and clatter of dishes. As Trish's gaze swept over each food stand, it finally came to rest on Pizza Park, and she saw Storm Reynolds leaning lazily across the counter, waiting on a customer. She could watch him now, could look at him from this distance without worrying that he saw her. He was writing down an order and laughing, and from time to time he stopped to point at the wall behind him, where the menu was posted. As Trish recalled his wink at her earlier, a shy smile came to her lips, but then it quickly faded as another face replaced Storm's in her mind. With a quick intake of breath, she stiffened in her chair and redirected her stare across the eatery again, seeking out long ash-grey hair and dark glasses. He could still be here, you know, sitting anywhere, watching anywhere. But he's not, she said out loud to herself, and she grabbed the seat of her chair with both hands, trying to get a grip on her fears. He's not anywhere. He was just some weirdo who was hanging around the mall, but now he's gone and you're never going to see him again. You're talking to yourself. Nita's voice sounded so close beside her that Trish jumped. You're getting more and more like Imogen every day. As Trish took the tray her friend handed her, Nita glanced around slyly. I bet I know what you were dreaming about. Who you were dreaming about. Her face grew dreamy as she nodded towards Pizza Park. Don't be ridiculous, Trish sighed. He's probably got 10 dozen girlfriends. But he winked at you. Which proves he's just a huge flirt and properly fickle, a flirt and fickle and not to be trusted. A man, Imogen clarified soberly, and Nita looked amused. Oh, listen to Imogen, the expert, she teased. Okay then, let's pick someone out for Imogen, Trish. Someone in the eatery. Who should it be? Imogen looked more bored than annoyed. Don't you have anything more intelligent to do? Look, there he is. Nita grabbed Trish's sleeve and shook it excitedly. There he is, Imogen's guy, the man of her dreams. As Trish followed the point of Nita's finger, she saw a young man standing at one of the trash cans, dumping in food scraps from piles of dirty trays. Oh, stop it, Nita, Trish began, but Nita broke in again. Look at him, Trish, he's just her type. 5 foot what? 10? Or maybe 6. Whole feet if he stood up straight. Long hair combed back. Or is it greased back? Jeans with holes. Oh, sorry, maybe he's trying to be stylish. And a t-shirt with something... Nina squinted her eyes, trying to see. Something written on the front. Wait a minute. Yes. Okay, now we know he loves rock music. And the sexiest combat boots. Don't you think so, Trish? Oh, and that denim jacket with the sleeves cut off. The absolutely perfect touch. Trish took a bite out of her taco and glanced over at Imogen. I think his name is Wyatt. I always see him working around here, but I don't really know anything about him. He kind of keeps to himself. Wyatt, Nita crooned. The absolutely perfect name. Actually, Imogen said stiffly, I think he is rather nice looking. Nita's mouth fell open. Trish burst into laughter. So there you are, Nita. You're a better matchmaker than you thought. They kept watching as Wyatt scraped the last of his trays, picked up the whole stack, then started past their table. Trish glanced at Nita and saw the impish look on her face, but before Trish could say a word, Nita shoved her chair back, ramming Wyatt in the stomach. There was a resounding crash as the trays bounced all over the floor, and people in the food stands began to cheer. Oh my gosh, Nita exclaimed, looking up wide-eyed at Wyatt. Where did you come from? Imogen put her head down on her arms and groaned. Trish scooted her chair back, trying to decide whether to help or die from embarrassment. I'm so sorry I hit you, Nita insisted. She reached out towards Wyatt's midsection, hesitated, then pressed her hand lightly against the front of his shirt. I really didn't notice you there. Wyatt stared at her. He gazed down at the mess on the floor. He looked back at Nita again, his face bland. Yeah, it's so hard to see me with all this stuff I'm carrying. Calmly, he took a hold of her hand and pushed it away. Trish started to laugh, but caught herself in time. She glanced quickly at Nita and saw the girl's mouth open in surprise. Well, I said I was sorry. Nita tried to recover herself, lowering her long lashes in a most heart-melting way. Wyatt didn't seem to notice. I'm Nita, she added almost desperately, and this is my friend Trish, and this is my sister Imogen. She broke off, amazed, as Wyatt walked off, leaving the trays scattered around their table. Trish and Imogen stared, open-mouthed, and both of them burst into fits of laughter. Well, I don't know what you two are getting so hysterical about, Nita said indignantly. I thought that was very rude of him. Oh, Trish nodded, and you crippling the poor guy was nothing rude there. Well, he didn't have to be like that, Nita pouted. She stared at Wyatt's retreating back, then rested her chin in her hands. He's a challenge, all right. Did I miss something here? Trish laughed again. Weren't you trying to grab him for Imogen? Forget it, Imogen said matter-of-factly. He made the mistake of ignoring her. Now the poor guy doesn't know what he's in for. Well, really? Nita sat up straighter, frowning. How hard could this turn out to be? I mean, well, look at him. I did, Trish said, gathering up the remainder of her dinner to throw away. He looked pretty cute to me. And intelligent, Imogen added, straight-faced. That thing, Nita yelped. Him? Excuse me, but I think you must have him mixed up with somebody else, like somebody with a brain, maybe. That was terrible of you, Trish scolded, dumping her trash in the litter can. You deserve just what you got. I don't feel sorry for you one bit. Well, all I was trying to do was get Imogen a date, Nita defended herself. I mean, nobody's going to ask her out if she just sits there with her face on the table. She tossed her tray on top of the can and gave Imogen a patronising look. Imogen, you've just got to get yourself some kind of life or something. Well, really, right now, all I've got to do is get back to work, Imogen sighed and got up. And thank you, Nita, for the entertainment. As Trish stared back at the muffin stand, she couldn't resist one last glance towards Pizza Park. She could see Storm talking to a sullen Wyatt and laughing uproariously, and she chuckled to herself, guessing that he'd watched the whole scene. You've got a message, Bethany greeted her crossly as Trish got back to work. And from now on, when I say dinner is half an hour, that doesn't mean 3 minutes after. Trish nodded mutely, puzzled about what might be waiting for her, and was surprised when Bethany handed her a piece of paper. "What is it?" she asked, but Bethany was already disappearing into the back room. "I don't know. Something about your car. Somebody hit it or something." "Hit it? In the parking lot?" Trish's heart sank. "Well, what should I do?" "He said for you to go take a look at it," Bethany grumbled. "He has to make out a report or something." Trish unfolded the scrap of paper and saw a curt message scrawled there. It noted the make and model of her car and instructed her to notify the security office after checking out the damage. Irritated, she grabbed her jacket and hurried through the mall to the north exit. Employee parking was in the furthest lot from the building, and she didn't relish the idea of walking all the way back in the cold when having to come all the way back again. "Just my luck," she muttered, starting her trek across the huge parking area. "I just get that stupid car out of the shop and someone mangles it." She walked briskly, hugging herself against the cold, glancing up from time to time at the round October moon glowing behind wispy clouds. Even though the parking lots were dotted with street lamps, less than half of them ever worked, and she'd made it a practice to always carry a pocket flashlight in her coat. It took nearly 5 minutes to reach the employee lot. She remembered she'd found a spot near a payphone that afternoon, and as she finally spotted her old Mustang, she began to run, already fumbling in her pockets for her light. To her surprise, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with the car at all. Stopping a few feet away, Trish surveyed it carefully, letting her eyes wander over every inch of the outside, searching for some kind of damage. The car looked fine, just as she'd left it that afternoon, when she came to work. Puzzled, she walked slowly around it, playing her flashlight over the hood, the sides, the trunk, the tyres, then came back to her original spot, shaking her head. There must be some mistake. It must have been someone else's car. They got the license plate mixed up somehow. More annoyed now than bewildered, Trish backed away from the car and turned to go. And when the payphone suddenly rang, shattering the darkness with its shrill scream, she froze there, watching it with her open mouth, unable to believe what she was hearing. The phone rang and rang. Trish stood there staring, the cold seeping through her jacket, through her skin, deep, deep into her veins. It must be for somebody who's supposed to be there right now at this exact moment. Only they're not here, and it might be important, and whoever is calling will just keep waiting and waiting, and nobody might ever come. Trish walked over to the phone. She reached out and took the receiver, lifting it slowly to her ear. "Hello, Trish," the voice said. It was a whisper, soft and familiar, yet strangely unreal. It sounded like dark reflections in ash-grey shadows. "I'm eating the muffin," he said. "It tastes just like you." Chapter 3. As Trish raced back into the mall, she spotted a security guard near the information booth and stopped breathlessly in front of him. "You've got to help me," she pleaded. She saw the tired look of suspicion on his face and the way his hand automatically went for the walkie-talkie at his belt. The phone in the parking lot." She was gasping for breath, trying to get the words out, trying to stop shaking. She'd run all the way from her car and she felt frozen, her words tumbling uselessly, making no sense at all. "Take it easy now, miss. What's the problem?" The guard was using his most patronising tone of voice. "You say the payphone isn't working in the parking lot? Well, that's not our problem. You'll have to contact the telephone company and—" "No, no!" In spite of her best efforts to be rational, Trish reached out and tugged on his sleeve. He stepped away firmly, but gently removed her hand. "Okay now, just calm down a minute." "No, my car! Someone ran into my car, but—" "You need a tow truck? You want me to call one from here?" He moved towards the information booth and Trish stepped quickly in front of him. "No, you don't understand. You're not listening," she said, more frustrated by the second. She saw the growing annoyance in his eyes, but she rushed on. "They said someone hit my car. Only no one hit my car. But the phone started ringing. The payphone by my car." "Okay, hold on. You say the payphone by your car? The payphone in the parking lot?" Yes, that's right." Trish was nodding frantically, hopeful that at last something was beginning to get through to him. "See, it started ringing and so I answered it." "You answered the phone in the parking lot?" "Yes, only it was horrible. This guy, I saw him in the mall earlier this evening. It was him on the phone." Who was on the phone? A guy you know? No, I don't really know him. But he knows you. So he called you on the phone in the parking lot. No, yes, Trish broke off abruptly, seeing the cold mask of indifference settle over his face. He folded his arms across his chest and glared at her. Look, girlie, I don't have time for all these pranks. You kids think it's so much fun to play on each other. You think, Trish spluttered, you think this is a joke? Well, it's not, and I'm not your girlie. Don't fool around with me, kid. You're liable to ruin my good mood. He glowered at her. And tell your boyfriend to grow up and quit playing stupid tricks, huh? As Trish stared in disbelief, he turned on his heel and walked away. It took her several minutes to recover. She was so angry, standing there while the busy throngs of shoppers jostled around her. She suddenly had the eerie sensation of being someone else, someone in a movie, and the real Trish was just standing there, watching the other Trish's frustration and rage. This can't be happening to me. Things like this don't happen to real people in real life. She began to walk mechanically, vaguely aware that she had to get back to work before she got in worse trouble. Prank! She could still hear the phone ringing, shrill, insistent. Could she still hear that voice? He knew my name. He knew I'd be there. He knew I'd answer. Oh, God! Trish stopped, covered her face with her hands, and immediately pitched forward as someone rammed her from behind. Hey, are you okay? A strong hand caught her by the shoulders and steadied her. She managed to twist around and look right up into Storm Reynolds' dark blue eyes. Well, hi there, he grinned. How's the muffin business? In spite of her present frame of mind, Trish could feel her cheeks turning red, and she quickly looked away. Oh, hi, I didn't know it was you. Or you'd have gotten out of my way, right? He had a cute grin, teasing and sexy at the same time, and had a habit of cocking his head a little to one side when he spoke. I guess I wasn't paying much attention, Trish said lamely. No, I'm the one who wasn't paying attention. It's a bad habit of mine. His grin widened, although sometimes bad habits pay off. His blue eyes held hers for a moment, and with an effort she forced herself to look away again. Are you on break? She finally asked, and he nodded. Getting some exercise. Care to join me? I'd love to. I guess not. I have to get back to work. You feel cold? You been outside? She nodded again. She heard the ringing of the telephone and the whisper of that horrible voice. She stammered in confusion. I thought my car had been hit. Storm was watching her, his face puzzled. You thought? You weren't in it? No, that is, someone left me a message saying it had been hit, but when I got there it didn't look like anything had happened to it. You sure? Do you want to check it again? I'd be glad to go with you. Trish started to agree, then stopped herself. He was practically a total stranger. She didn't even know him that well. How could she ever explain to him what had happened out there? He'd never believe her, and he'd probably think she was completely crazy. Definitely not something that will make a good first impression. No, she said at last. No, I'm sure it hasn't been hit. Someone must have gotten it mixed up with another car. He was still staring at her. He nodded slowly. Well, that's good, isn't it? Yes, she said, staring out at the main walkway, the milling throngs of people, the bright lights. What had just happened to her out there couldn't have been real. It was too incredible. No wonder that guard didn't take her seriously. What's your name? He asked, smiling. What? She snapped back to the present, conscious now of his eyes upon her. I'd like to know your name, he said. Is that okay? Trish Summerfield, he nodded. I see you when you're working. I don't know if you ever noticed, but our stands are right across from each other. As if I hadn't noticed. Yes, I've seen you, she said lamely. My name's Storm Reynolds. I know your name. I'm sure every girl in the mall knows your name. You haven't been working here long, have you? Let me guess. He thought for a moment, his eyes twinkling. 5 days. 5 days exactly. Yes, Trish nodded, startled. Or should I say 5 nights? You don't work days. You come in the afternoon and work till closing. That's right. You look surprised. He squeezed her shoulders, and that wonderful grin played at the corners of his mouth. I always notice the really important things. Trish could feel her cheeks growing warm again as she lowered her head. Well, Storm took a quick glance around them and gave her a playful shake. Do you realise we're still standing here holding up the traffic? What do you say I walk you back to work? Oh, really, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. His look was mildly reproachful. It's the least I can do for running you over. Before she could answer, his hand slid down her shoulders onto her arms and he turned her around, guiding her through the crowds. Trish was almost relieved that he was steering her. Her head was spinning so fast she could hardly concentrate on where she was going. As they reached the eatery, Trish could see the long line of people waiting at the muffin counter. She could also see Bethany standing at the register watching her with a stony expression. She didn't realise she'd even reacted, but suddenly Storm stopped and gently pulled her back against him. Problem? No, she said quickly. It's nothing. It must be something. Bodies don't go that tense for no reason. It's my manager, Trish said almost apologetically. We don't get along very well. Hey, he leaned down and she could feel his breath on her ear. Don't worry, it'll be okay. His hands lingered a moment longer on her arms. Then he suddenly turned and went back to his booth. Trish steeled herself for an attack as she got behind the counter, but Bethany showed remarkable control. How's your car? She said stiffly. It was okay, Trish murmured. Okay? I'd hate to guess how long it would have taken if it hadn't been okay. Trish said nothing, only stepped up to the front and began filling orders. At least for a while this was something mechanical she could do to keep from thinking, something pleasant she could put into the dark, confused spaces of her mind. Yet somehow the customers didn't seem so friendly to her tonight, pressing so close against the booth, pointing and pushing, unable to make up their minds. As she listened to their clamouring all around her, she was suddenly terrified that a soft, strange voice would whisper her name from the crowd. Chapter 4. You are kidding, aren't you? Nita stared at Trish with wide eyes, her head shaking slowly from side to side. Please, Trish, tell me you're just trying to scare me. Nita, why on earth would I kid about something like this? Because it's time to close up and we have to walk out of the parking lot together, and you know how I hate things like that. Nita glanced up at the clock, then back at Trish. Trish stared down at the floor and wrapped her arms tightly around her chest. I'm not kidding, Nita. The phone in the parking lot was really ringing, and I really picked it up, and the voice really said what I told you he said. That's so perverted, Nita groaned. So you think it was the Muffin Man? Well, who else could it have been? Trish sighed. She wandered over to the rack of blouses, sorting through them disinterestedly. He knew my name, Nita, she said softly. He must have given that message to Bethany, and then he knew when I got into my car. He knew the number on that phone, and somehow he knew I'd pick it up. Oh, Trish, Nita began, but Trish angrily cut her off. Why'd I ever pick up that phone? It was a stupid thing to do. I can't believe I was so stupid. You weren't stupid, Nita defended her, smiling a little. Trish, when a phone rings out in the middle of nowhere, it's so unexpected. I don't know, I probably would have done the same thing. It was stupid, Trish murmured. She walked to the doors of the front of the store and stared out into the main walkway. Shoppers were hurrying back and forth in a steady stream, heading for the parking lots, and already the other shops along the corridor were closing up for the night. Are you going to be long? She said absently, and she felt Nita's hand on her shoulder. I hope not. Imogen's going to the library to do some studying, so she's already got a ride with someone, and these stupid girls came in last minute and they're still in the dressing rooms. Can't you make them leave? I've only told them about 100 times already, Nita chuckled, but Trish didn't join in. Look, we have to tell someone about this. Oh, no one's going to believe this, Nita. I told that guard out there and he looked at me like I was some sort of delinquent. Frustrated, Trish plopped down in a chair and glowered. I know it was a dumb thing to do, but I did it. Now I have to figure out what to do next. What if he calls me again? Now how's he going to do that? Nita put her hand on her hips, looking dismayed. Like you're going to answer the phones in the parking lot from now on. Look, Trish, it was probably just a one-shot deal. That guy just wanted to do something perverted and he did it and he got his thrills. So now he's just going to go on his merry way. That's usually how weirdos like that operate, isn't it? They're not really dangerous, are they? It was just so calculating, Trish muttered, more to herself than Nita. He had to have known when I was there so he could make the call. So where was he? I'm not sure you can see all the way to the employee lot from the mall, Nita said doubtfully. Maybe he was timing you. That's possible, isn't it? He could have been in the eatery and saw you leave, so he took a chance that when he called you'd be at your car. Trish gave a reluctant nod. It's possible, I guess, unless he was closer. Maybe he was in a car somewhere at another payphone in another part of the parking lot. He could have seen me from there, I guess. Or timed you again, Nita thought aloud. Or maybe he was in a car and he had a car phone. Nita shuddered. And anyone could get that payphone number, so he did it as a sick joke, and now you'll never hear from him again. I hope you're right, Trish sighed. But I still think we should tell the police, Nita persisted. If there's some sicko running around the mall, they should know about it, so they can do something. But I sounded like an idiot, Trish said unhappily. I mean, when I heard myself telling that guard what happened out there, who's going to believe a story like that? Would you if you didn't know me? Nita gave her an understanding smile. Well, it is pretty hard to believe, I guess. I see what you mean. And how did he know my name? Trish sighed again. She put one hand on her temple, rubbing the headache that was beginning there. He said my name, Nita. How did he know my name? He could have asked around at the eatery. For that matter, anyone could probably find out who works here if they went to the main office. Nita. Trish stood up slowly, her eyes widening. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Maybe he works here. Nita stared at her for a moment and shook her head. I don't know. If we're talking about the guy behind the newspaper, I don't really remember anyone around here who looks like that. Are you sure? Think hard. But there's so many shops here, so many employees, Nita shrugged helplessly. And there must be thousands, hundreds of thousands of shoppers. Trish will probably never know who this guy is. I really have a feeling it was a one-shot thing, like I said before. Once he saw you run back to the mall and he figured he'd scared you to death, he probably took off. He's probably going to some other mall tomorrow to try and scare another girl out of her mind. Trish nodded, not entirely convinced. Can we go now, Nita? I'd really like to get home. Is your mum still out of town? Trish looked sympathetic. Yeah, she's still on a stupid business trip flying around Europe somewhere, Trish said gloomily. You're so lucky your parents aren't divorced and that you have a normal mother instead of a business executive. That's funny, Nita smiled. I always wanted a mum like yours. Yours is a lot more glamorous, plus the fact that you have all the wonderful privacy. She gave a wistful sigh and Trish couldn't help chuckling. It's not privacy, Nita. It's total solitude. Not real fun when you've just gotten a crazy phone call in a parking lot. You know you can always stay with us. Nita gave her a hug and Trish hugged her back gratefully. I know, but it's only for the rest of the week, and I don't really want to wear out my welcome until I'm sure I'm really being terrorised. It was meant to be a joke, but neither of them laughed. Nita glanced once more at the clock, then shouted towards the back of the store where the dressing rooms were located. Come on, you all have to leave. I'm closing up the store now. Trish glanced around and suddenly realised that Nita seemed to be the only one working. Are you all by yourself tonight? Well, Frida was supposed to be with me, but obviously no one knew she was planning a trip. Nita made a face. I still have to clean up, so I'll be a while. See anything you want to try on? We got some new stuff in today. Trish got up and wandered around the store, sorting absent-mindedly through the racks of clothes, picking up sweaters, putting them down again. Normally she would have jumped at the chance to have first pick at the new selections, but her heart just wasn't in it. She could hear Nita running the vacuum cleaner and the muffled giggles coming from the girls in the dressing rooms. From the record store next door, the driving beat of a rock band reverberated through the walls. Pausing beside a display of new dresses, Trish flipped quickly through the hangers and drew her breath in slowly. She'd never seen such a beautiful dress. Long and flowing, it was all white satin and lace, like a gauzy cloud with delicate trimmings of ribbon and velvet. Holding it at arm's length, she ran a finger carefully along the low-cut neckline and a tiny row of pearl buttons at the front, the soft, full skirt. A princess might have worn this, she found herself thinking, and she smiled, feeling silly for her own romantic notions. Some long-ago princess in some passionate legend with some wildly happy ending. It's you, Nita declared, stopping behind her, nodding enthusiastically. It is. Try it on. Trish hesitated, read the price tag, started to put it back. You've got to be kidding, as if I could ever afford such a... Try it on! Nita grabbed the dress from her and quickly shoved her towards the fitting rooms. It's part of our new Purely Passion line, and not just anyone could wear this wonderfully sweet and very naughty dress. Go on, you've got time. I want to see how it looks on you. As Trish started to the dressing rooms, she met the girls coming out. Pushing and still giggling, they converged upon the front counter with armloads of clothes, and Trish guessed Nita would be busy for a good 15 minutes more, just ringing them up. Well, why not? I can dream, can't I? The girls had left the dressing rooms in total disarray, and as Trish made her way along the short passage, stepping clumsily over piles of clothes, she discovered that the last 2 cubicles were the only ones clean. It was a small area, just the hallway with a full-length mirror at the end of it and 5 tiny stalls branching off on each side. The stalls had no doors, but rather bright blue curtains which pulled together and fell about a foot short of the blue carpeted floor. Trish hung her dress on the wall and started to close the curtains, then stopped, chuckling to herself. There was nobody else here, and the mirror was right outside. She decided to leave the curtains open. Again she ran one hand slowly over the dress, loving the flow of it beneath her fingertips. Anyone who wore a dress as beautiful as this couldn't help but feel beautiful, she thought. And it had been a long time since she'd felt that way. Nita was the one who got all the dates, and Imogen was the member of all the clubs at school, but Trish was just Trish. Boring and unpopular, and nice, she reminded herself. Everyone was always reminding her how wonderfully nice she was, but being nice still didn't make her less boring, or any more popular, at least with the guys. Sighing, she pulled her sweater up over her head and shook it out of her tangled hair. There were no more hooks on the wall, so she dropped the sweater onto the floor in the corner. She unzipped her pants and slid them down her hips, then paused a moment to kick off her shoes. As she bent over to lift her jeans from around her bare feet, a cold chill suddenly snaked across her legs, and startled, she straightened up and peered out into the hall. "Nita, is that you?" There was no one in the aisle. Empty dressing rooms gaped around her, and she slowly stepped into the stall. "Nita? Come on, are you trying to scare me?" And yet she could hear the soft murmur of voices from the main part of the store, Nita's unmistakable laugh from the front counter. "You're imagining things. That whole thing with the Muffin Man, you're just paranoid." Taking a deep breath, Trish slipped the dress from its hanger and stepped out into the hall. There was more room out there, and she didn't like the feeling of being cornered in that tiny cubicle. She stood and looked at herself in the mirror, examining her body with a critical eye. It wasn't that she didn't have a shape. Nita was always telling her that she had great curves in all the right places. It was just that she always felt stupid letting anyone see her. Bulky clothes made her feel comfortable, hidden and safe. Safe. Uneasily, Trish glanced behind her, down the short expanse of hallway. She knew she was being silly, but it almost felt as if someone else had suddenly come into the dressing area with her. As if somehow she'd heard a quiet footstep, sensed some stealthy hidden movement. Trish shivered and turned back to the mirror. She pulled the dress down over her head and began fastening the delicate pearls along the bodice. She could hardly believe how it made her look, all softness and light, the curves of her breasts just showing above the daring neckline. As she took a step back, for once she couldn't help smiling at her own reflection, and then she felt it again. The icy stream of air across the floor, across her bare feet, and as she lowered her eyes she saw the hem of her skirt rustle softly, as if some invisible hand had touched it. Gasping, she jerked her head up, and suddenly she knew what it was that had alarmed her before. That strange, unknown something that had frightened her and made her feel like she wasn't alone in these dressing rooms. Eyes. She knew it now, just as surely as she was standing here, that she wasn't alone, that someone somewhere was watching her, and had been watching her the whole time. With a choked cry, Trish gathered up her skirt and ran.